You're listening to Risk and Resolve, where leadership, business, and risk management collide. We bring you real conversations, sharp insights, and strategies for success. And now for your hosts, Ben Connor and Todd Hufford.
Welcome back to another episode of Risk and Resolve. I'm Ben Connor alongside Todd Hufford, and today's guest is Brent Yeagy, the president and CEO of Wabash. He's been the president and CEO since June of 2018 and joined Wabash in 2003. Prior to that, from 1993 to 2003, Brent had several roles with Delco Ramey, and prior to that was in the U.S. Navy. So I read this bio, Brent, and I thought with all of the things that you have participated and accomplished that it's a bio of like a 85-year-old individual. So you've packed a lot in a short amount of time. But we're glad to have you today, Brent. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Todd. It's a pleasure to join you guys and to have a conversation with you.
Yeah. So before we get into Wabash and some of your other background, just tell us a little bit about yourself and where you grew up and what growing up looked like for you.
Sure. So I'm an Indiana kid. I grew up in Madison County in Alexandria, Indiana. My mom was a school teacher at a rural school. My dad was in management at Delco Ramey and Anderson when Anderson had 40,000 UAW, GM workers. And so typically a farming blue collar background, surrounded by cornfields. My friends and I were in, it was about sports and 4-H and, your typical Indiana kid.
Yeah. So what was your dream growing up? When you grew up, you wanted to be what? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, my dream was to be a doctor. Was so I can think about being 6, 7, 8 years old, getting a doctor kit for Christmas, and that's what I wanted to be because that's what I thought being successful looked like at that time, and I held that dream really all the way through high school, and then started to you learn about what other things are going on in the world, and that starts to change.
Yeah, for sure. So you went to Purdue University, and then ended up going into the United States Navy. Tell us about going to Purdue, your experience there, and then your decision to join the Navy and that experience as well.
Yeah, so that's a nonlinear story. So you got to bear with me here for a second, and it somewhat mirrors, I would say, a host of choices in my life. So I finished up high school and was looking at colleges all around the Midwest. Knew I wanted something in the engineering fields, and at the time, I was thinking in the chemical biomedical area. Purdue was a natural fit. My father went to Purdue, and so my first year would have been fall of 1989, and successful at Purdue. When I, as a sophomore, I went into initial engineering, and with a lot of kids, you go through that second year, and you go, hey, where I'm starting out isn't exactly what I like, and you kind of lose a little bit of your purpose during that time period. And what was going on for me at the time was the first Gulf War was breaking out.
Yeah.
In March of what would that be? March of 1991, which would have been the second semester or the spring semester of my sophomore year. And I have always been somewhat of, I guess, a leader in what I've done. Like I was captain of the football team, president of National Honor Society. I just do those things, right? and I gravitate towards them. And I always wanted to lead people. And something was hitting me watching on the couch, in my apartment. And it said, you would be happy in the military. Go do that. And
Wow.
We had some conversations as a family with my mom and dad. And, I wanted to go down an ROTC path. They weren't big fans of that. So you do what you do when you want to take control. I enlisted. So I finished that sophomore semester. I enlisted in May. And by November of 91, I was in the Navy in boot camp.
Wow.
So the Navy is its own story, but the bridge back to Purdue I was in the military. I was in a nuclear power program at Purdue, in the Navy. And while doing that, successfully completing those schools, I was picked up for enlisted commissioning program. Basically, it's an officer candidate program that you apply for, sent back to Purdue to finish my degree, and then did that, and then was commissioned as an officer in the United States Navy.
Wow. What were some of your key takeaways, or how did the Navy shape you as a person, as a leader, with what you learned through that experience?
Yeah. So, there's so many different unique experiences that you're exposed to, and you're exposed to them at the ages of, I was 20 when I enlisted.
Yeah.
I was leading, 20 people at 22. Now you're 24, 25, and you're running a nuclear reactor on a submarine underwater for 80 days.
Yeah. High stakes.
High stakes at an age where today or even then you'd look around and your typical 25-year-old is, not doing that. And
Doing something different.
It's a little different. And so I talk about it at work all the time. We talk about pressure. You talk about risk. You talk about uncomfortableness. I have felt uncomfortableness that is far beyond what I deal with on a day-to-day basis at Wabash, any place I've ever worked. And that's hard sometimes because I don't necessarily have the same reaction as others. That's a learning for me, and it's also a learning for them. People, being ultimately responsible, not just for their job, but for their lives of 18, 19, 20, 22-year-old young men primarily. It was at that time, it was the submarine force was a all male service. Everything's about operational readiness. So I cared about their lives, their finance, their housing, their kids, their wives, their relationships, because they had to be dialed in at high stakes in a high stakes game. And so you're barely figuring out how to run your own life, and you're managing and you're being taught to manage and, anticipate and lead these people 360 degrees assets of their lives because you have to. And I think that's been, between the high pressure, diverse, almost existential type issues you deal with in the military, life or death, to the holistic way that you have to think about people. Those two things have stuck with me and probably shape more than I even understand about how I do what I do.
No.
Brent, in 1998, I'm a junior at Purdue in organizational leadership.
Yeah.
And they were real strong about frontline supervision in a manufacturing setting. And I'd say Wabash National, obviously Wabash now, was a big partner of the School of Technology back in that day. And I remember we talked about, the speed to which you could affix a tire to a rim and then affix that assembly to a trailer.
Sure.
Just doing a little research, I guess I didn't realize that Wabash National came into existence as that entity in 85.
1985.
That's not that long ago, considering that was less than 20 years ago. You at that time when I was there, 03, you start there in 03. Business isn't 20 years old. How many employees does Wabash have when you start in 2003?
2003, we had approximately, I would say, 23 to 2,500 employees nationwide. We had a couple different facilities at the time. Most were in Lafayette. We had a small plant in Illinois. We had a plant in Arkansas. So about 500 people between those two, and another 2,000 in Lafayette. And
go ahead.
And today we're 13 manufacturing locations. I'd say over a 5-year period, our average employment's 6,500 people, and we're in 13 states.
And how many acquisitions from 2003 until today have happened?
There have been, I would say, 3 major acquisitions. The Walker Group our Transcraft, which is now platform trailer operation in 2007. The Walker Group which is now tank transportation equipment in 2012. And then Supreme, which is our truck body business in 2017.
And during that time, how many different roles have you held at Wabash?
Well, let me think here. I started out in environmental engineering, safety engineering, and plant engineering, basically facilities. Then I became director of manufacturing, VP of manufacturing, then general manager for the trailer business, then vice president and general manager for, we'll call it additional, took over some of the branch operations. Then I became president of all trailer operations, then chief operating officer, then CEO.
That's an impeccable recollection of every role and title. I'm not sure I can do that. I think I've only had 2.
They've all left a mark, so it's relatively straightforward.
3, did you think you'd still be at Wabash in 2026?
No. When I left Delco Remy has went through. Let me start there. We're going through a lot of transition at that time. I was there when they spun off from General Motors. So I went through that process. They were the first parts manufacturer to be part of that whole redo of General Motors.
Yeah.
And by the time, 2001, 2002 came around, they were financially, you could kind of see the handwriting on the wall, what was going to happen between their pension obligations and benefits and just the market in general. So Wabash had recruited me. I knew him from Purdue, just like you.
Yep.
Right. And actually, I took a OLS class on leadership, and I got to do the tour at Wabash in 1996 or 7.
Sure. And
Dr. Wiebel and all that.
Yep. Did you ever have Dr. Vanderveer?
It sounds familiar, but my memory's not that impeccable. So I went to Wabash, after they had recruited me for some time, which is that specific why is a different story. But the punchline is I thought maybe 3 years, maybe 4. I thought it was just a waypoint. I thought based on the trajectory I was on, I would move into, big 3 automotive. I'd be heading towards, Detroit or something like that. And, the type of home I had, the way we were running our lives, everything was about 3 years and out. And I was there about 2 years, and a little bit less than 2 years. And the COO at the time came to me and said, "We have an opportunity for you. We want you to be director of manufacturing." I go, "That's not what I do." And he's like, "Well, that's the point. It's a developmental role. We want you to do this, and it will open up your world to so many different options, but you got to take the risk." And I go, okay, how much time do I have? 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
Go talk to your wife.
Yep.
Okay. Went home, talked to her, said, okay, if I do this, everything has changed. Everything has changed.
Yep.
And we went back the next day and said, okay, let's roll the dice and make it happen. So now it's 26 years later, and it seems to have worked out.
Did that COO turn into like a mentor for you ongoing from that? Or was that just more or less, hey, this guy has got skills, let's give him an opportunity, and then they entrusted that mentorship to somebody else? Or
Yeah, so that gentleman was and is Dick Jeremini, and he was the previous CEO that transitioned out when I became CEO.
Oh, really?
So he literally made every decision that
Paved your path.
propelled my career. Every move I ever made, he was at the heart of it.
Wow.
So I owe him a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we dive in a little further, just to level set for the audience, could you give a little bit of an overview of Wabash, the operations, what you guys do?
Yeah.
That informs some questions.
So we kind of touched on a little bit. So Wabash is primarily a manufacturer of transportation equipment. And that equipment is a mix of over-the-road trailers. So your Class 8 trailers that you see being pulled behind a semi-tractor going down the road. The tank trailers, so the very large, 53-foot tankers that are hauling everything from milk to raw chemical goods. We produce platform trailers. So when you see the large construction jobs where you've got pipe and concrete, bridge members being pulled, those are our trailers. And then the truck bodies. So truck bodies so think about those. Those are everything from the Penske Rider, small moving vans, and rental and lease vehicles, all the way to how food gets delivered to most of the inner city and metro area restaurants, and everything in between. So that makes us the United States' largest provider of transportation-related equipment in the country. We're not the largest at truck bodies. We're not the largest of trailers, but we are the largest when you put everything together in terms of transportation systems. And like I said, we're roughly about 6,500 people. Formed in 85, went public in 91.
It's quick.
Yeah.
From formation to going public.
Yeah, the founder was very entrepreneurial, and they went from zero to $1 billion in revenue between 85 and 92.
Wow.
So Wabash was founded on an entrepreneur who took a chance, who found value, exploited the moment, built a company.
Hustled his tail off.
Yep.
Wow.
What was that moment at that time? What was he exploiting? What was unique in the marketplace?
Yeah. So in 1985, trucking was regulated very much the way that utilities are today. Alcohol, beer was coming almost through early 90s to where there were regional protections around the country. And so goods could not be hauled from one coast to the other on the same trailer because everything had to stay in its region. So that curtailed the size and scale of and protected small carriers and medium-sized carriers around the country. It also promoted regional manufacturing. Deregulation occurred in 85, opened everything up.
Yeah.
He knew what was getting ready to happen. He was working in a company near basically Monon, Indiana.
Monon, right.
And came to Lafayette. And his vision was, I'm going to go sell exactly what those carriers need, who I believe are going to scale nationally, therefore grow quickly. And I will basically let them propel me to scale. But I got to give them exactly what they want because they all want something different. And the predominant way at the time was the saying was, I'll give you exactly what you want as long as it's exactly what I make and it's white. And he said, I'm going to do the opposite of that.
Right.
And he ended up buying the assets of the previous largest global trailer manufacturer in 1997.
Who was that?
That would have been Fruhoff.
Fruhoff, yeah.
He could totally disrupted the market by his move.
Well, how did the product differ in, call it 1986 from what was being built in 1984?
The specifications and the combination of almost an infinite level of variability. So the products that we make, if you watch it go down the road, it doesn't look that sophisticated. But that product is ridiculously highly engineered to be ridiculously light, but carry potentially 80,000 pounds. Well, not 80,000 pounds, but 40 to 50 to 60,000 pounds of goods.
Right.
And there are 500 different choices, from your lights to your wiring to your tires to your rims to your brakes to your calipers.
Extremely customizable.
Completely customizable to your operation for what you're going to haul, your cost of ownership, your asset life management, and we allow them to do that. We facilitate them doing that.
Yeah. Interesting. Is every facility there in Lafayette, did you take over an existing manufacturing facility of any sort, or was it all ground up, brand new stuff in 85 you guys built?
When you talk about when the company was first formed?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was National Homes was owning the site at that. It was an old National Homes plant. The two of them. That's the plant on State Road 52.
Yep.
Which was a business that was formed post World War II to build pre-manufactured homes for GIs coming back.
Yep.
As part of the leveraging the GI Bill and other programs that they had, so they all needed housing. That ran its course and went through multiple owners and uses, and Wabash picked up that asset, started to in 85, kind of rounded it out by 87. And then we have two other plants in Lafayette, but the primary one is south on Veterans Memorial. And that was a Purina. I'm sorry. It was one of them is a Purina dog food factory that we converted, and the other one was a pudding pop factory. And those now make trailer products. And so we have a little over 1 million square feet of manufacturing space in Lafayette, Indiana.
Wow. How much total across all your other sites?
About 2.8 million.
So a third is still in Lafayette.
Yeah. Half our employees are in Lafayette.
So talk about that a little bit. I mean, it's a symbiotic relationship. It is finding and attracting and keeping talent in Lafayette easier, harder, or the same as it was 20 years ago?
Well, I'll start. I would say it's changed. It's neither better nor worse. It's just changed. The city of Lafayette, Greater Lafayette, has done a really nice job creating an environment that attracts people. And, it's one of the few environments over the last 15, 20 years that you can almost say consistently has continued to grow and prosper as compared to other areas of the state. Right. We benefit from that because it's a constant attraction of people. Lafayette, I would say, somewhat dominates this region from an employment poll. So we're pulling people from Danville, Illinois, right, to give you an example. Hour and 20 odd minutes away. I think what has changed is like you hear from a lot of industrial players out there, specifically in manufacturing, the talent and the workforce is becoming less attuned to labor-related hands-on work and basic industrial understanding that you would have learned in your shop class in 1989 or even 1995. That's tended to go away. And there's a gap there across the board. So the ability to utilize talent well, scale it, and it and have sustainability of that talent is different than what it was 20 years ago, whether it's available or not.
Can you give us an example of how you guys have deployed artificial intelligence in any phase of the manufacturing process?
Yeah, so I would say there's two ways to think about the application of artificial intelligence in an industrial application. One of the things that people think that manufacturing is, about tools and force and assembly and those types of things, but every manufacturing operation starts with a ridiculous amount of information that has to be processed when you convert sales specifications into engineered orders, into procurement, to shop drawings, to instructions, to now I got to actually put my hands on something or lay it into a machine to do whatever conversion needs to be done.
That was a lot of steps before you touched a single piece of it.
So most of the AI that we deploy is upstream in that process to control and speed up and make more accurate the information flow from the start to the finish. And when we can do that, not only do we mitigate defects and cost and waste, we enable the worker to have a much more streamlined and better chance of being effective, doing what they have to do. Okay. That's probably 75%, maybe even 80% of where we've deployed it. And that's typically in our costing quoting process, in our conversion of sales orders into engineered bill of materials. So what used to take weeks can now take minutes in what we do. And then on the shop floor, I wouldn't call it explicitly AI per se. And not to get on a soapbox, but AI is just, from a layman's perspective, just a upgrade of what we were doing in terms of data analytics. It's just data analytics at scale. In some cases, what we call an agentic environment where there's a level of self-learning that goes with it. It's just another version of it. Mm-hmm. So the ability of using analytics out on the shop floor to predict, manage, and control what we do has always been there. At our South plant, where we have moved to a much more robotic, automated process, there is a level of diagnostics and control that it's not the same level as agentic AI, where when we think about kind of the self-living and perpetual learning environment, but it is absolutely an enhanced version of what we'll call the 2000s version of analytics, so that we have a much deeper, more robust access to data that we manage the business by, is how I would frame it.
Yeah, you mentioned
I was going to go there too. You mentioned robotics. Do you have a vision of even like a humanoid robot being in your workforce at some point in time?
I would say no. That's the short answer. No. I think it's nice and cool to talk about. And I think there are, as you push to learn what it would actually take to have a humanoid robot, and we're just talking about something that's bipedal mobile, right? Because everything else that thing does, we already do, right? That's all we're doing. Something can stand up and move, right? And what's the difference between that and it being on an AGV on wheels?
Yeah,
there's not a big difference. I would argue somewhat it's a cool factor that people want to play with, and I'm not sure how much it really matters.
In your setting, I mean, you got a fixed line, you got
exactly.
Places, yeah.
You want to talk about a military application?
That's different.
Maybe. Warehouse? Maybe. But not necessarily an industrial setting. Now, when I think about the upper section of a humanoid-like robot and its ability to articulate and do things, and if I can think about putting an AI application inside of it that allows it to do more, assess the environment differently, so it is more adaptable to changing conditions. Now that is interesting.
Yeah.
That is probably actionable at scale in the next 3 to 5 years for, we'll call it a broader tier of manufacturers. And we can put those in places where we have high ergonomic issues, force,
Right.
the strength ratio issues, high repetition, dangerous applications, all kinds of things we can probably do there that will enable us going forward.
Right.
But they have yet to show us that there is something that is adaptable to the environment as a human being, that is dialed in and is cognitively fully capable. Right now, we'll beat that thing day in and day out economically.
Yeah. What would be a time horizon where you think that could possibly change? Obviously, you mentioned that right now, no go, and obviously this is pure speculation, but how long do you think it would take for that technology to?
AI is a big force multiplier on this, but so Hyundai Automotive just showed this at the I forget which technology it was, CES in Vegas, just 3 or 4 weeks ago. Humanoid robots that they are talking about deploying at one of their plants in it's either in Mississippi, South Carolina, maybe Illinois, on a trial basis. And they're partnering with Boston Consult, or I forget the firm. But anyway, I think we'll start seeing versions and we'll hear stories in the next 12 to 24 months. But to say that those will be at scale to where the typical operator can, call their automation company and it be cost available, like in the ballpark for what a general manufacturer, you're probably, I'd say, at least 8 to 10 years away from that. And I think your big guys will be experimenting with it. The Eli Lillys of the world will probably be doing something in their plant here. But the Wabashes and the even the Cummins of the world are not probably, maybe experimenting, but they're not using it at scale.
Right. So you became CEO in 2018 of June, and less than 2 years later, obviously we experienced a pretty large change in business and society through the COVID experience. What was that like for you as you had, how did things change for you as you had an experience before COVID as the leader? And then how did that change for you coming out of COVID, and how did the business change? And what were some of the things that you guys, faced through that experience?
Well, I just from a business condition standpoint, I would say between mid-March and the first or second week of April, we had a 70% reduction in backlog. We had roughly almost $1 billion of backlog, and we saw that evaporate.
Oh my God.
Just gone. And so that translates directly into revenue reduction. And so you're looking at that going, well, that math doesn't balance anymore.
Right.
So that required, and beyond dealing with COVID itself, now you've got to redo the entire workforce because you're completely overcapacitized for the reality of what you have and what you're showing. So we had to go through that. And that affected thousands of employees in that moment on top of COVID. We just couldn't have them anymore. There was nothing out there, and we didn't know when it was going to turn back on.
Right.
We're all sitting there in April going, I don't know if this is 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, forever.
Yeah, 14 days to stop the spread turned into something different than that. Right?
Is this an existential problem, a transient problem, an overblown short term? And we had no idea at that moment exactly what was the scale of local, state, national, international response and where that was going. I mean, it's being made up on the fly. And I think that was one of the issues that we talked about. And I'm kind of looking outside my window here because we went really, I leveraged somewhat of my military background, and we went to a very deliberate and strict command and control environment, which was a departure from where we were, which was much more decentralized and collaborative, because clarity, someone had to call clarity in the moment, and no one around us was giving us clarity. CDC wasn't giving clarity. National government wasn't giving us clarity. We had 13 states that we operate in that were wildly different, giving us all kinds of missed messages. Some are like, let it fly. And others were, shutting down left and right. We had to operate all of it. So, we were meeting as a team, as an executive team, like top 5 every day, just to assess what we had found out in the previous 24 hours and what decision had to be made and communicated and put into effect immediately. To operate, we were considered essential based on transportation equipment and what's required to do that. We saw the strain on the supply chains that was occurring. And, the risks that we took, we had to get, I'm not going to get too far into the political weeds here, but some of the decisions that were being made were not based on what I would call a scientific basis, where someone could pull up a paper and say, yeah, I get why you're doing this. Right. And we had to make calls at times to go, we're going to do this because we actually think this is better. And we're not going to do this because, 1, ineffective, and 2, might actually be more dangerous.
Right.
And so we had to make calls and stand on those calls. And I got my legal group going, well, you're exposing yourself to A, B, and C. And I go, that is not my only concern here.
Yeah.
I got real people doing real things. And if I believe that makes them safer than that, even though it's being given by ABC national group or government, that might be the wrong choice, and we need to go do this. Right. And we did that on a daily basis.
That's a lot of courageous moments needed, right, in all of those meetings.
A lot of lonely moments, because you're the only one that it sits with when it's said and done.
Right.
And we knew the way we had to lead, and I knew, is that in that moment, inaction or over debate was unacceptable. And, it's like, it's a submarine when you're in a combat situation. We're not choosing and debating. When the order comes down, you do it. We will analyze it later.
Right.
But we got to do it, because standing around looking at each other is worse.
Yep.
Right. Well, it's interesting because, talk about lonely moments. I mean, you go to your council of advisors and you get multiple different answers. So you get to make the call.
Yeah, I get to make the call, and you guys can talk to me later.
Right.
When you get more information. Your fear is not the actual information I'm looking for.
Right. We can talk about in those years, negatives that came out of that, but maybe drill into how did going through that experience and coming out of that experience, how did you actually turn, lemons into lemonade and your business become better through that?
So we took that opportunity. It was an exercise in organizational behavior and science, right? People need structure in those moments. People need something to focus on that feels directed and concrete when everything around them is the opposite.
Right.
And so we looked at, and we took the opportunity to do some things inside our business that would have been really tough to do under normal circumstances. We totally recapitalized the balance sheet. We reorganized the company to move away from strategic business units into what we call a one Wabash functional approach, which also facilitated a more command and control environment. We addressed I'll call it waste in management layers and structure that had been weighing on the business, so that we could make decisions faster, more cost effectively, fresh, and we knew we would need that coming out no matter what happened. We knew we needed it right in that moment. We needed it going forward. And we did all of that by the end of May. And so, the debate was, well, our people are going to be so challenged with everything else going on. My argument was they're going to know exactly what they got to do when they come to work.
Right.
And they're going to be able to accomplish things and do something. And my bet was that's going to create engagement and a comfort that we know exactly what we're doing. And we made it all happen.
Good opportunity.
So one thing I want to highlight, and just a experience that we've had getting to know each other briefly over the last year, a little less. We've gotten an opportunity to talk healthcare together, and I was just super impressed with your leadership around pursuing strategic improvement. And what I saw was, hey, let's be concise about what we want to talk about. But you quickly brought together your leadership team to have a direct conversation about a topic, but to bring your team along with you to build consensus, to establish what a project is and really how to compete in an area. That was super impressive, regardless if it was a topic around healthcare. I'm assuming that's exactly how you look to solve big problems in general.
Yeah.
So I thought that was super impressive. To double click into to healthcare a little bit, what do you see within healthcare that, and this is my opinion, that most leaders don't see with the opportunity to take control and make improvements, not just for the financials of the business, but for your people in general? The opposite of that is, I can't control anything, and so we're just going to let it ride. I'm going to focus on areas where we can control.
Yeah.
Where did your mindset change around that business unit in particular?
I think the way I would frame it for me is it never actually changed. It's the way it's always been. Generally, the way I look at the world is very, people will say too much at times, but very visionary and breakthrough oriented. Like I don't do very well with going, okay, here's the status quo and you need to operate inside of it. That's typically going to make me do something different just because there's nothing that feels right about that, right? That typically is a red flag that something's wrong. And so I had initial exposure to the world of benefits in a traditional setting at Dokarimi when I got put in charge of workers' compensation, short-term disability, family medical leave, and long-term disability as part of my time in HR there. And you're going, this is ridiculous. Like no one would ever do this on purpose. And then, so I got involved into the, back office management of all those accruals and the accounting and all the stuff. And you're going, oh my God. And then as you get into it, and then coupled with that, which is I'm generally curious anyway, is learning about the system more and more. And that's a 25-year journey, and understanding the structural issues inside of American healthcare and how it then expresses itself through how an industrial company or any company has to work through the cost of that and the waste inside of it and the lack of control that you accept. And I don't do very well with accepting a lack of control. And so you couple that with a general idea of the issues really a high propensity of not accepting, a willingness to challenge, and then you couple that with just an intrinsic need that, Wabash on a given year is anywhere, and we are highly a cyclical business because of our market. Well, let's just pick a nominal number of 2.5 billion in revenue. That's $50 million in just in healthcare costs. And the rule of thumb was, well, your consultant comes in, tells you the average cost is a 12% increase year over year. So we're going to forecast that. And then let's put our stuff around it to make sure it's not 13. And, when I first got into a role that I could manage that, I'm going, well, it does not seem like that's going to work for me.
No.
In any way, shape, or form, just fundamentally. And then, then I started getting to work on it and saying, we're not going to do that. So cut it in half, right? I didn't know what the right answer was. Okay, we're only going to accept 6%.
Right.
So you figure it out.
Right.
Well, that would mean we have to do this. Very well, make it happen.
Yep.
What's different? Yep. Let's risk. Take it, because this thing becomes 75 million in 5 years, and I got a bigger problem.
Yeah, that presents a different risk, right?
Yeah, and people don't think about it that way. They just accept it, or they try to pass it on to the customer, or take it from the employee.
Right.
And I just felt like that was one of the biggest, I don't know if I'd shared this with you or not, one of the biggest fights I ever got into with my mentor was on this topic. And he's like, you don't know what you're talking about. And I said, I do think I know what I'm talking about. We just are accepting two different realities. And, I lost that argument. He was the boss. But when I became CEO, then I won that argument.
Right.
And we've been approaching it that way. And the challenge that my team's got right now is I want to go to the next level of challenging, right? And the world has progressed significantly in its understanding of how to innovate in and around the healthcare system. And I'm saying to our people, go look at that, bring it to bear inside of Wabash. Be willing to be disruptive. You don't have to do it. You don't have to blow it all up. Find a way. Find what is most applicable for us. Use a 80-20 Pareto principle and figure out where you can make innovation happen. And then I'm going to turn them loose. And I'm waiting for them to work it and come back. And if it's not big enough or disruptive enough, they'll get sent back to the proverbial dry erase board to give it another shot.
Yeah. What advice would you get? So to carry out that analogy earlier, a CEO thinks they can't control the cost of healthcare. They then delegate it to HR and don't engage, which is unfortunate for both parties.
Yeah.
And then when trying to engage, there's now like a fight, right?
Yeah.
Of why are you getting involved now? What advice would you give to a CEO that maybe is afraid to get involved because, well, if my employee's healthcare, I don't want to get involved with that.
Yeah.
Or that's going to disrupt HR and that's going to create some issues there. What advice would you give to a CEO who has those kind of thoughts that go through their mind?
I think the first thing I would say is they need to look in the mirror and try to come to terms with they're actually responsible for the outcomes of the healthcare with their people. They have responsibility to their owners and their shareholders to make sure that that asset is taken care of well, to show up and to perform and to manage their lives. It's very similar to what I learned when I was in the military. It's exactly the same, and I lean on that. And so the outcome matters, right? The physical, literal health outcome matters for your employee, and then the way that you can best maybe take care of the world around them and how much you can or feel comfortable doing. But just checking a box saying you've got competitive benefits, you're allowing yourself to stay outside of any meaningful engagement and understanding that and accepting and being curious enough to figure out that you can actually have a material impact in the lives of people that is a much more legacy-based way of thinking about your role as a leader, as a total leader of your business. And you don't get to delegate that. That's first. Second is our job is, and when you're the CEO of a company, is everything is a potential breakthrough opportunity. Even when you don't think it is, you still challenge it to be a breakthrough opportunity, because maybe they'll prove you wrong and they can actually pull it off. So you couple those two things together and drive for different. I mean, even if you drive and you get halfway there, you've moved the needle within your business.
Right.
And it's just a way of showing up. And you don't have to be a healthcare expert, but you can be an expert at leading.
Right.
And I challenge them to do that.
What just change the topics a little bit, and thank you for that. I love that. It's, most people think they don't want to get involved in healthcare, and this isn't what I signed up for. But the idea that it's a missed opportunity, and more or less the reality of you might not have chose to be involved in healthcare, but it chose you.
Yeah.
It chose you. So
yeah. Well, think every time, if you don't get involved and materially understand the choices that are being made, when you give that high level direction of, well, you need to control healthcare, that's getting too high, 9 times out of 10, they're going to make a decision that is a negative impact on the current state of that employee's life. Period.
Yeah. That's
what you just authorized. I think you have a responsibility to do better than that.
Yep. If you mentioned, we talked a little bit about the idea that you were in a submarine as a 26-year-old with high stakes decisions. With the seat that you sit in today, what would you be telling your 26-year-old self on that submarine?
About 10 things don't ever do again. would be part of it, but I'm not going to repeat.
Yeah, right.
I would tell that person, you don't know how alive you are right now in what you're doing. You don't know how privileged you are to have this ridiculously unique experience that will shape you in ways you cannot comprehend. The memories will be extremely pronounced in your life and will live beyond most of what you experience. And at times it's really, really hard, but the meaning you're going to take from it is going to support you during different hard times, because you can do a lot of things and you can weather a lot more than you think.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Brent, as a steward of a business, we're all stewards in some way, shape, or form. You're stewarding materials, you're stewarding facilities, you're stewarding customers. But as we talked about with healthcare, one of the greatest assets you have is you're stewarding your team. Mm-hmm. Let's say your teammates from all levels catch a hold of this podcast. Talk to them. Your time in this role, like Ben's and mine, it's finite, right? We don't know the exact when you'll step down and do something different, but this is today's reality. What do you want your team to know about where Wabash is going? What do you want to implore them? You've already done it, I'm sure, through many different ways, but
specifically around healthcare. No,
not necessarily. Just broadly to say, hey, you guys know me as your CEO, but this is where my real focus. This is where we got to go. If you haven't heard me in all my talking from as a CEO, here I am talking as a guest on a podcast. Wabash team members, this is the message. This is where we got to go.
That's a great question. I think I would start by saying, as a whole, now remember, I got a whole group of different people. So it's hitting them all different places. Mm-hmm. You want to meet people where they're at. Well, I got a lot of people in different places.
Yeah.
Sure.
So the generic way, because it's a different answer to different people. But I would say this. Over the last 5 years, you've done a tremendous job of adapting to a playbook that had never been used at Wabash. And as a result, we're sitting here today. We've survived COVID. We are in the midst of the worst freight-based recession. So the industry that we serve right now is 3 years into a recession. We're in the trough in freight activity in the United States. And it was really driven down when tariffs curtailed manufacturing activity. That's not a political statement. That's a mathematical truth. And so if you hadn't done everything that we had asked, we would not be resilient right now. We would not be looking to the future, and we would not be able to maintain a level of security that we are. Now, what got us to this point is not going to get us to where we need to be in the future. So while we are focused on the near term, there's more change that we're going to have to make to further improve the business, not only for our shareholders, but for you, so that we're even more resilient in the future. And so we're going to have more change coming. It's going to be deliberate. It's not going to be reactive. It's going to be forward thinking. And over these next 3 to 4 years, we're even going to do more to position Wabash to be stronger than we are right now. That would be the base message.
Great. That's awesome. Well, Brent, this went real fast. That was an hour just like that. But we ask our guests two questions we ask these two questions to all of our guests that we want to ask you, and I'll ask the first one. What is a risk that you have taken that has changed your life?
I don't know if I'd call it I guess it is a risk, but when I was in the Navy, I had just finished nuclear power school. I was weeks away. Let me back up. I finished nuclear power school, and I go on to this next school called Prototype, where you qualify on a reactor, and it was going from Florida to South Carolina. And I was dating a girl in Florida, and I went down there going, I'm not dating anybody because that's just baggage. And I got a Navy career and I'm moving all over the place, and I don't want that. And through all of that, when I knew I was leaving, I'm like, I can't leave without her. Like, that's a distraction. That's unacceptable. So I asked her to marry me. We had known each other for, at that time, about 4 or 5 months. We got married at 7 months, and we've been married 33 years.
Awesome. So good.
So I'd say that one, in the scheme of it, is as big as has been more shaping than anything.
Absolutely.
Well, she's also decisive, because when you were presented with the offer for the director of manufacturing with 24 hours, it took her about 24 seconds to say, you take that job.
She did. She's like, what do you want to do? Well, I think I should do it. Well, okay, well, let's do it.
Awesome teammate.
Second question, you've been at the company, looks like, 20 plus, 22, 23 years. First 15, various different roles, the last 7 as the chief executive officer. So, Brent, what is left yet unfinished that you have the resolve to complete?
Yeah, well, I think you can tell by looking at me, I have clearly less in front of me than I have behind me in my time at Wabash. And I think it's a little bit of the message we just talked about. When I think about the next, call it X period of time, and we'll just use 3 years, 4 years for relevancy. I'm sending no signals about my time at Wabash, but that's relevant for our people and what I want to accomplish. I'm going to get them through this downturn and get us back on the upswing when the market rebounds. I want to climb it better than we ever have. But at the same time, I'm not done reshaping how they receive healthcare and the outcomes that they get. I'm not done building the culture here for whoever gets the reins after me so that it is impeccable. Hey, we're never perfect, but we're pretty good. But there's more that we can do. And there's a set of hard choices of some things that we're in that we need to not be in, things that we need to grow into, that we're going to grow into. And so we got some big choices that I want to set the table for. So over the next 3-4 years, Wabash can, we'll say, fully express its brand for our customers in a way that is more exciting than what it is right now.
Very cool. Thank you.
That's excellent. Well, Brent, thanks for the time today and your insights with your personal experience, your leadership. Excellent. So thanks again for joining us. And I want to thank all of our listeners for joining us for another episode of Risk and Resolve. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to Risk and Resolve. See you next time.